Hello, culties. Sorry. I was going to try to do this promo in a British accent, and I've just now decided against it. Culties, it is your host, Amanda Montell. And despite my cold feet about the accent, I am so excited to announce that Sounds Like a Cult Live is coming to London. A live version of this very podcast is coming to London's gorgeous Bush Hall on November 24th. It's going to be a night of culty conversations, of juicy special guests, unhinged PowerPoint slides, and yes, a live podcast recording that you get to be a part of. There's also going to be a book signing, a meet and greet, an unfiltered Q&A, and I'll be doing a special live reading from my book, Cultish: The Language of Fanaticism. Tickets are on sale now, either at soundslikeacult.com or amandamontell.com/events. Grab yours before they disappear. And come join the little Sounds Like a Cult cult across the pond. Hope you follow me in London on November 24th. Green Chef makes it easy to spend less time in the kitchen and more time out enjoying fall, especially with their new Heat and Eat meals, where you can have a delicious, wholesome meal ready in just 3 minutes. Pick from Mediterranean, gluten-free, plant-based. I am pescatarian, and I always find that there's something absolutely delicious from Green Chef. Make this fall your healthiest yet with Green Chef. Head to greenchef.com/50magical and use code 50magical to get 50% off your first month. Then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. That's code 50magical at greenchef.com/50magical. Welcome to the Magical Overthinkers podcast, a show for thought spiralers, exploring the subjects we can't stop overthinking about, from opinion overload to revenge. If you can relate to the feeling that despite living in the information age, the world only seems to be making less sense, or if you can connect to the idea that for some mysterious reason, it just feels especially hard to exist as a human in the world right now, then you're in the right place. This podcast is here to soften the clash between our innate irrationalities and the overwhelm of this time. It's here to help us think less about the things that don't matter and more about the things that do, to help take the temperature down in our brains for a little while. I'm your host, Amanda Montell. Today, we're overthinking about social awkwardness. Couple questions for you. Do you have a habit of waving back at people who aren't actually waving to you? Or perhaps, if you're anything like me, have you ever sent a text to an acquaintance that accidentally came off as somehow super sassy? Ever accidentally typed a question mark when you meant to send an exclamation point? Nightmare. Or maybe you're someone who's overshared a bunch of embarrassing personal facts to people you just met at a party. Or panicked and said something wild inappropriate at a work meeting and thought about it every other night since. If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you, dear listener, are familiar with social awkwardness. And you are not alone. Social awkwardness is allegedly universal. And yet I have to ask, what even is social awkwardness? Is not quite understanding how to person or behaving like a buffoon actually a sign that we're socially inept? Or is it just an indication that we might be more earnest than everyone else? Or neither? And furthermore, how, in the age of social media surveillance and so much pressure to be cool and constant critiques of being cringe, are we supposed to navigate all this? Coming across as socially awkward is something that I dedicate a freak amount of time and thought at attempting to prevent. According to psychologists, though, social awkwardness actually isn't even a flaw. It actually might even barely exist. I came across a 2000 study by Gilovich and Peers, which introduced the concept of the spotlight effect, showing that most people actually consistently overestimate how much other people notice and judge their behavior. Meanwhile, plenty of research shows that people actually often like us more when we slip up socially, as long as we are otherwise perceived as fairly competent. That is known as the pratfall effect, a psychological phenomenon first identified by psychologist Elliot Aronson. It turns out that minor blunders can make us seem more relatable, more human, not less. Still, while science shows that awkwardness might not actually be the social death sentence we think it is, instead serving almost as connection in a goofy disguise, I can't help but think that that all applies to other people, but certainly not to me. From my perspective, awkwardness feels no less painful in the moment or in retrospect. It activates self-consciousness, rumination, and sometimes even physical discomfort. If you can relate to any of these experiences, then I am so excited for you to hear from our guest. To help us unpack the messy, magical overthinking of social awkwardness, we're joined by writer and podcast producer Alex Sujong Laughlin. Alex is a seasoned professional in telling stories that live in the gray areas between culture, identity, and emotion. And she's no stranger to overthinking her way through a cringy moment or two. You may know her from her work on the Normal Gossip podcast. Her new podcast, Try Hard, is out now. So today we're overthinking about everything from whether others are as concerned with our awkwardness as we are, the role of factors from alcohol to the pandemic in social awkwardness, and what on earth we're supposed to do with our hands when we're standing around. With that, here's my conversation with Alex. Alex, hi. I'm in a funky mood right now. It must be because of the topic at hand.
Hi, Amanda. I'm so excited to be here.
Are you? Or are you just saying that?
No, I'm literally thrilled. Secret, I pitched myself to be on this, which is the most socially awkward, embarrassing thing to do. So
No, that's a gorgeous, everything I've ever gotten to do, it's because I begged to do it.
yeah, I mean, I think this is exactly what we're going to talk about today.
Thank God. All right. We're already getting into it, but could you please introduce yourself and your work?
Who am I? Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh no.
It's a magical Overthinkers episode. Here we go.
Hello.
What is your name?
My name is Alex Sujong Laughlin. I'm a co-owner at Defector Media, and I am the co-creator of Normal Gossip. You might have heard of it, but my new project is called Try Hard, and it's a podcast that I'm hosting and producing where I help people try to do the thing that they always wished they could do.
Wholesome. A girl after my own heart, for God's sake. So before we get into this conversation about all things social awkwardness, cringe, etc., I need to pose to you the question that I present at the beginning of all of my Magical Overthinkers interviews, which is, what is an irrational thought spiral that's been living rent-free in your head lately?
Oh, God. So my partner is running a half marathon with me. We are training for a half marathon together. And he has been having some just light heart things. It just feels like his heart is beating a little faster than he wants it to. And, it's such a small thing. I feel like I'm violating HIPAA even by talking about it on a podcast. But this is all just to say that last weekend I got so freaked out about his heart and this half marathon that I was like, oh my God, what if he dies while we're training for this? And then I'm going to be a widow, and then I'm going to be a single mother to our cat. And then where am I going to move? And I started looking up Zillow listings in New York because I was like, I'm going to have to move to New York. And then I came to him and I was like, I'm going to have to live in a studio on the Upper West Side. Don't make me a widow.
No, that sounds gorgeous. That sounds like a great widow's journey. I really, really hope it doesn't happen, but that honestly doesn't sound that bad. 2 questions. What's your cat's name?
My cat's name is Pong, like ping pong.
Perfect.
He's so good.
And how old is he?
This is contentious because he was a street cat, so we don't know how old he is.
Yeah. No, it was a stupid question.
Anywhere between 9 and 13, so I say 8.
I so get that. I've been saying that my dog is 6 for 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so in your career, you have worked in so many vulnerable storytelling spaces, from journalism to podcasting to personal essays. How would you say your relationship with social awkwardness has evolved as you've moved through your career and stepped into more public-facing roles?
So I feel like the origin story between me and awkwardness begins in middle school. I was so socially awkward. I mean, I think that we're kind of kindred spirits in a way in that we are weirdos.
Thank you for seeing me that way. Sometimes I'm afraid people think I'm normal.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like the worst insult when somebody's like, you're pretty quiet, aren't you? I am, but you're reading the wrong thing from this right now. Anyway, I had a beautiful concoction of social awkwardness, weirdness, and full-on anxiety. And what that resulted in was that I was kind of scared to talk to people when I was in high school. I just like struggled to make friends. And I say all of that because when I was in college, I joined the school newspaper and we had to do man on the street interviews a lot, which meant that I had to walk up to strangers and say, "How do you feel about the latest legislation about marijuana legalization?" And then record their name, their major, their hometown, their email address, and take a picture of them. And that was horrible, but it also broke something in me. And I became much less afraid to walk up to people and talk to them. And I think my career has followed in part because it's given me an excuse to get to really intimate places with strangers that I might not get to otherwise, like in a normal work situation. So I'm like, oh, I can totally ask these incredibly invasive questions because I'm allowed to. It's my job.
Yes. Oh my God. There's so much permission that I just, even when people don't know what I do, I give myself permission because I'm like, I'm an interviewer, I'm a writer at parties and shit to just like go really deep with people really fast. And honestly, people love it. Like, skip the small talk, man. Like, I want to know why you're a rabbi.
Yeah, totally. I feel like people are disarmed when you are forward with them. Part of my special blend of social awkwardness is that I just really lack subtlety when I'm interacting with a person. For example, with my dear partner, we started dating a decade ago because I had a crush on him and we were hanging out and I said, "I have a crush on you." And that was it. And we started dating a couple days later. But that's like how it has always gone for me. I cannot finesse. And I think that people tend to actually appreciate that more than they are put off by it, though sometimes they are put off by it.
I relate so hard to this. I feel like maybe the stereotype of someone who's socially awkward is like a person who's in the corner, like blinking slowly. But the way it manifests for me, and it sounds like now for you a little bit, is like the oversharing, the lack of subtlety, the dumping on people. And I don't know. I definitely have overshot the mark at times for sure. And that provokes so much spiraling and like questions about what is socially acceptable. And I think we're living in a time socially with loneliness being an epidemic and social media being kind of like socializing, but not really, when these questions are even more confounding. And I want to talk about the relationship between social media and actual social awkwardness. But first, I have to know, is there a moment from your life that lives in your brain as a kind of canonical social cringe time capsule? And do you see that differently now than you did at the time?
Yes. So my freshman year of college, I had a brief dalliance with a guy from my high school who was a couple years older, who I had had the biggest crush on when I was in high school. And he was like kind of popular. Like, he didn't know who I was when we were in high school, but then we were in college and suddenly he knew who I was. And he would bring me around to hangs with his friends who were the popular kids from our high school. And they would like sort of vaguely recognize me, but they didn't know who I was. And I was dressed kind of weird. And I remember one evening we were like out on a balcony and somebody made a joke. And I can't even tell you what the joke is, but it was a reference to a movie. Everyone laughed. And then a little bit later, someone mentioned the movie. And I said, "Oh, I haven't seen that." And then the guy I was dating said, "Oh, but you laughed at that joke." And I was like,
Clocked.
"Oh." And I still think about that.
No, that was awkward of him. You're just supposed to give people grace in those moments. Like, you're obviously not going to interrupt everybody's communal guffaw by being like, "I don't know that movie." You're going to laugh with everyone else and then be honest later when it's not going to interrupt something.
Yeah, I mean, he was a 21-year-old boy, so giving grace
I'm
is
mad
probably
at him.
not. Yeah. I think about that moment all the time, and I remember the dress I was wearing that was like so not right for that night. And I remember the shoes I was wearing, which were not right for the dress I was wearing. And I was trying so hard and failing so bad. And then he ghosted me that summer and I was heartbroken. But everything is okay now. I'm fine.
You're more than fine. If you find yourself thought spiraling about what to make for dinner, let Green Chef be your guide. Green Chef makes it easy to spend less time in the kitchen and more time out enjoying fall, especially with their new Heat and Eat meals, where you can have a delicious, wholesome meal ready in just 3 minutes. Green Chef recipes feature fresh, seasonal, organic produce and 100% responsibly sourced proteins to help you feel your best. With 80 plus dietitian-approved meal options, Green Chef really does make it easy to find any meal that fits your lifestyle. Pick from Mediterranean, gluten-free, plant-based, protein heavy if that's your jam. I am pescatarian and I always find that there's something absolutely delicious from Green Chef that's also easy to make, which is extra important for me because I'm not in my domestic goddess era yet, I'll tell you that. And thanks to Green Chef, I don't even really have to be. Green Chef really could be a wonderful addition to your autumnal vibes this year. Make this fall your healthiest yet with Green Chef. Head to greenchef.com/50magical and use code 50magical to get 50% off your first month. Then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. That's code 50magical at greenchef.com/50magical. Okay, let's get back to basics here and try to identify what awkwardness even means.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you? Is it a feeling, a label, a violation of a cultural script? How do you interpret it?
Okay, so I think that awkwardness is a really flexible container that can hold a lot of things. It's definitely a feeling that you can have internally. I think that it speaks to a mismatch between something that's going on inside you and the way something is supposed to be, in quotes. And so you can feel awkwardness that is specific to you that nobody else can perceive. But then there's also awkwardness of a situation and externalized awkwardness where maybe it's being perceived, but you aren't feeling it. It all has to do with perception and the stories that we're telling and living internally versus externally and how things are matching up with codes of how we should be behaving.
I also want to talk about awkwardness in the context of gender, race, generation, neurotypicality. Do you think the standard for social awkwardness changes depending on someone's identity?
Totally. I mean, just speaking from my identity as a mixed Asian woman, I know that so many of the moments that I felt really uncomfortable in high school were in part because I was trying to disprove a stereotype that I was a quiet, demure, math-obsessed nerd. Because things like that are projected onto people's bodies based on how they're perceived, what their race is, ethnicity, gender, whatever. When you don't match that, that can create that friction that creates the awkwardness, you know? So I feel like a lot of my awkwardness came from me trying to overcompensate and be like, hey, guess what? I'm zany. Nobody needed you to do all that.
Yeah, but it's so not your fault that you needed to or felt the need to.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious. A lot of your work now is about cringe.
Mm-hmm.
We did an episode of this podcast last year on millennial cringe. I do feel like millennials are quicker to embrace cringe. We were baptized by cringe culture, doggo lingo, etc. Whereas Gen Z feels a little more cringe phobic, some of them. I mean, my husband's little sister, who's 19, was living with us all summer in between her freshman and sophomore years of college. It was fun to like rear her. I don't know, but also like bond and learn, I don't know, compare cultures. It was the best. But I talked quite a bit about social awkwardness with her because she was like 13, 14, 15 in the pandemic. That was really formative. And she was talking to me about how now she experiences social awkwardness in every little corner of her life. Overcoming it is a major priority for her. She doesn't know when to wave at someone in the hallway at school. She doesn't know like how to determine if her closeness or distance from them as a friend, how that relates to whether or not you should wave.
Yeah. Are you a small smile friend? Are you a wave friend? Are you a hug friend? Like, there's so many levels.
Exactly. And then I watched her post something on Instagram. She only has one Instagram post up because I guess she thinks it's cringe or try hardy to have more than that. So I watched her post a second Instagram. It is so that like blurry Gen Z. I didn't spend more than 2 seconds on this. Like it's a mirror selfie. The caption is one emoji. It took her 4 hours. And so could you kind of like spitball on the generational divide between cringe standards?
I've been thinking a lot about this because I am posting a lot on social media about Try Hard and like trying to get the word out about the show. And I've been thinking a lot about the like performance of ease and the performance of chillness and how it's all a performance. And I think with the generational thing, what my brain goes to is always Obama era optimism. Our soft brains became firm in those years when there was a brief moment where we were like, maybe things will be okay.
Hope.
Maybe literally hope. And you know, it was the a cappella and it was the big makeup and, you know, all of that stuff. And I really do not blame younger generations for the general tone of cynicism and nihilism that they have because things have been shit for such a long time. And I think that in the political context of what's happened in the last 15 years, yeah, it is cringy to be like, hey, everything's great. Oh my God, this is my fight song, you know?
That is such a good point. It's all very sort of apocalypse coded, this like policing of other people's earnestness. And I think some of that has to do with people just being self-conscious and projecting, you know, like a lot of Gen Zers were like literally not socialized the same way that almost every other generation was because of COVID and social media.
Mm-hmm.
And so concerns about social awkwardness probably burn a little brighter for them. And I think that's also probably why there is now this like nostalgic re-embrace of pre-COVID aesthetics and the mannequin challenge is back.
No
and
way.
I think like there are TikToks of sorority girls who are now like 18, 19, 20 years old wearing 2013 era Coachella flower crowns and doing the mannequin challenge where if you don't remember, it was like this YouTube tag, I guess you could say, where someone would go around with a camera and everybody in a scene would like freeze like a tableau.
Yeah, Taylor Swift did one with her family and friends on the beach.
Exactly. So I think there has been this like re-embrace of a time when benchmarks for cringe and social awkwardness were different.
Mm-hmm.
And social awkwardness was something that kind of only existed IRL and not online.
Well, it's so exhausting to be preoccupied with this all the time. Thinking about spending 4 hours posting a mirror selfie makes me want to die.
I know.
Bless her heart.
Yeah, love her. But I mentioned before, and we've been talking this whole time, about how so much of awkwardness is rooted in self-consciousness and that other people don't perceive social awkwardness the way that we perceive our own. Do you have any advice for how we can reclaim social awkwardness IRL or online without sort of like aestheticizing it or making it a trend? Like, how do we do it for real?
Yeah, I talked about this on an episode of Try Hard. My little thing that I do is I just tell myself I'm the bravest girl in the world. And it's like not a public thing. I mean, it is now because I've talked about it on the show. But I feel like reframing it and just internally being like, no, we're going to be brave today. We're going to do the brave thing is one way. Don't post about it. Or maybe, you know, thinking about the things that you are gaining from leaning into that awkwardness or the cringe moment rather than the awkwardness itself.
Yeah. And there are people who have sincerely turned their awkwardness into an empire, like Aubrey Plaza and Kristen Wiig.
Issa Rae.
Yes. And I don't think that was a performance or a trend. I think that was real, and it can be empowering, you know? Like, I've learned in my writing that when, say, a pop star forgets the lyrics to their own song on stage, think of something more awkward. That's like a classic nightmare. The
But people
audience
love it.
loves it.
Oh my
Yes.
God, yeah.
And so I think we're each holding ourselves to a sort of impossible standard without realizing that, like, as charming as we find awkwardness in other people and as much as it feels like it makes them human, like, that applies to us too.
Yes. And we have this idea that the whole world is like staring at us with abacuses in their hands and being like, oh, she's done too many bad things today. She has to go into the hole for the rest of the week. And it's like, there is no tally being run on you. And if there is, that's like really weird.
It's so true. Like, one of my irrational paranoias is that people are keeping and this is, I think, a podcasting, like, occupational hazard, is that, like, you and I are having a real conversation right now, but it is, like, on a microphone and will be broadcast. And so, like, that has gotten into my head when I'm having conversations in everyday life, for better and for worse. Like, I think podcasting has made me a better conversationalist, but it's also made me self-surveil more.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I think I fear saying something awkward more because, like, there's some weird part of my brain that's afraid that it will be remembered and on the record in some way. I don't fucking know.
Yeah. So I feel that way, but I also talk as if I'm going to be edited a lot. And then I have to deal with the reality that I am not going to be edited. It just went straight into somebody's ears and they just heard it. And I'm like, oh no.
But do you want to hear something interesting? People do edit you as they're listening.
That's true. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Have you ever edited a podcast episode and you're like, holy shit, this is incomprehensible?
Yeah, but in the moment, you can tell.
In the moment, you understood perfectly. You completely edited out the stumbles, the false starts, the meandering. It kind of reminds me of how, like, when you look out at a view that's really beautiful, your brain edits out the construction crane and the trash can, and then you go to take a photo of it, and the lens obviously doesn't edit out those things. So you're like, this photo is terrible. It's kind of like that. People do edit.
The brain, nature's podcast editing software.
If everyone could just listen to podcast episodes the way they listen to their friends, no, this is encouraging something weird and impossible. Yeah. Never mind. Yeah. Okay, couple more questions, and then we're going to get into some anonymously submitted thought spirals from listeners.
Okay.
In your own storytelling, you've embraced a kind of radical sincerity. Do you think earnestness and awkwardness are linked? Like, is awkwardness just honesty with no buffer?
I do think they're linked. I think that people sometimes feel really awkward around earnestness, especially if they are somebody who has sort of wrapped themselves in irony, which I tend to think of that as a defense mechanism. Some people will disagree with me, but I prefer to live in a more raw, wide open way where it's like, I want to feel everything. And when I do that, like, yeah, it can make some people feel awkward, I think. Or it can lead to some awkward situations, for sure. But for me, it just feels so much more worth it to have those experiences with the awkwardness than to sit it all out because I'm scared of looking dumb or feeling dumb.
Oh, man. That reminds me so much of, like, when in a moment of, you know, just like conversing with people at a get together or something like that, I feel pressure to, like, entertain the group when actually the more charismatic thing to do would just to be like ask some sincere and earnest questions to other people about themselves and like respond earnestly.
Totally. Yeah. Like a clown is fun sometimes, but also like people just want to talk to a person.
So true. Do you have a personal philosophy or go-to mantra when you find yourself in a spiral of post-social anxiety? And what helps you move on from that cringy moment?
My latest mantra that I keep saying to myself over and over again is the only thing that will make this more real is if you act on it. And so if I have like left a social thing and I'm feeling really, really awkward, the thing I want to do to comfort myself is to like reach out to the people who are there and be like, was I awkward? Was that weird? Blah, 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 blah. And what I'm realizing is that my anxiety is so powerful. It creates a whole universe inside of my head, but none of that is real unless I choose to bring it into the real world by talking about it. So that's what I have been sort of zeroing in on lately is just like, let's not make the fake things real.
Yes. And like there are actual social tensions that can be remedied by acknowledging it and moving forward through acknowledgement. But little social blunders are so not necessary. Like, I never remember the socially awkward things people do around me, ever. And I assume that other people hopefully don't super fixate on mine either.
In my mind, I am the only person who's socially awkward in the entire universe. And I'm so sorry for every human who has to interact with me.
Related to that, if you could go back in time and whisper something to your past self during her most awkward moment, as if she were a friend and not you, what would you say?
Oh my gosh. Well, I was looking through photos of myself from high school and I was just looking through all these photos and remembering how much of a misfit I felt and how unsure of every single word that I said I was. I was so scared to talk to anybody. I was so scared to connect with anybody. And I was looking through these photos and I was like, you're pretty cool. Like, you were a pretty cool kid. I would be friends with you. I mean, obviously, I would be friends with myself.
I don't know that that is obvious. I wouldn't be friends with my high school self, I'll tell you right now. I would have been like, you need help.
Yeah. Well, so I was like having a moment of like, I felt like I was my own little sister. And I was like, you're pretty cool. You're going to be okay. You're going to figure it out. And like all these things about you that you think are liabilities aren't. You're fine. It's that Instagram post that Jessa from Girls made where she's like, I think you guys are thinking about yourselves too much.
The navel gazing, for sure. And like social media is like this funhouse mirror that causes us to think about ourselves more. Yeah, I definitely would not befriend my high school self, but I do cringe the fuck out at my early writing that's on the internet, my early videos that are on the internet. I want to crawl in a hole and disappear. But the way that I forgive that awkwardness is that it got me here. You know, that's so fucking corny. But like, she was doing a thing, and I would not begrudge any other 22, 23-year-old those awkward attempts at finding their voice or whatever. And so do I want to go back and watch them? No. Are my eyebrows insane? Yes.
But you were doing your best.
God bless, you know, oh God. The alternative would have been to have nothing awkward to cringe about and now have no career. So
Exactly. I mean, that's the high stakes of this. Like, it seems really silly, but it's like, it is careers, it is meaningful relationships in your life. Everything I feel like that's worth having is on the other side of a really cringy, awkward experience.
So true. It's like, be awkward or die alone.
Yeah. Literally. Yes.
Okay, I want to relay some thought spirals that were submitted anonymously by our listenership. For those listening to this episode, if you want to submit a thought spiral for a future episode, you can do so by following Magical Overthinkers on Instagram. This person asks, are others as concerned about my awkwardness as I am?
The answer is no.
Period.
Yeah.
This person asks, what do I do with my hands? What do other people do with their hands?
Okay, so as a socially awkward high schooler, I thought about this so much. I thought about body language a lot because I was like, I feel so terrified at any given moment, and I need to try and project that I am not. And so I still like call on this to this day. I think I probably read about this in 17 magazine or something. But you know, it's all the things that your mom told you of like shoulders back, relax your face. Something that I always make sure to do is don't smile too much. Be okay not smiling, because people smile when they're nervous and when they're feeling uncomfortable. And it's a way of overcompensating for the moment. And so I will try to be like, okay, let's relax all the muscles in your face and just be neutral. That's not hands though. If you're standing, I do a lot of like hands on the hips.
I knew you were going to say that because that's like a power pose.
A power pose, yeah, which has been debunked, but unfortunately was not debunked soon enough because it is deep in my brain.
But that is a great place to put your hands.
Yeah, I mean, classic place for the hands is the hips or pocket.
Well, maybe it's a power pose because you're taking up more space.
Yeah, and that's a big thing too, is like I notice myself sort of crumbling in on myself. And so anything I can do to spread or just become a little bit more expansive, a little taller and wider, it doesn't always make me feel better, but I think it does visually help at least a little bit.
You know, there are a lot of cool pockets happening in pants these days.
There sure are.
You can always hang your hands out of a cool pocket.
Cool pocket, fanny pack situation, lots of crossbodies.
It's almost like model poses. Like
Yeah.
you can hang your hands out of like a jacket pocket, off of a crossbody bag. Gives you a little something to fidget with, you know, but not in a way that's like disturbing and unsettling and noisy for others.
Yeah.
You can never discount the power of a good finger gun when you're leaving. That's probably bad advice.
I do think in general, though, one of the antidotes to what do I do with my hands syndrome is focusing on other parts of your body and being like, I'll do something with this part of my body. And just remembering that you are a whole organism that has many parts of your body and not just
thinking about elbows.
Yeah. Just be like, oh, well, what do I do with my legs? Oh, maybe I'll like shift my weight onto one, like go into a little contrapposto pose, you know?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Move around a little. Get cozy. This podcast does have a YouTube channel. If you want to watch the YouTube channel, check this out. I learned to do this when I was in middle school, and sometimes I do this.
Oh, yours is so smooth.
I'm turning my fingers into a worm, and people love looking at that.
You know, this is dangerously close to awkward turtle.
I know. Speaking of millennial cringe, we just faced it head on.
Yeah.
Someone says eye contact is very rough for me. I have convinced myself to maintain it, and it's awful.
I mean, eye contact is intense. We didn't talk a lot about neurodivergence either, but that is a huge factor here as well. Like if you are on the spectrum, eye contact is difficult and weird and uncomfortable. And I think people notice when you don't make eye contact with them, but they also notice when you're making a lot of eye contact with them. And so the secret is to not do it too much. And like maybe you have like a 50-50 split.
Oh my God, I feel like there's a huge range in between none at all and too much. Like I don't even feel like I have a special issue with eye contact, but I definitely find myself like barely making it. Well, maybe I do have an issue with eye contact. I think if you can stomach it, you can really get away with barely making eye contact and still having it come across as like acceptable.
Yeah, I think eye contact is one of those things that there's a lot of room in between the things that start to feel awkward.
Yeah. And I think there's genuinely more and more and more grace for neurodivergence that just does not make room for eye contact.
Yeah, totally.
Someone says, I worry I word vomit at people, giving random facts, trauma stories, or am weirdly silent. Like one or the other.
I mean, that might be the case. The thing is, this stuff does happen. And like people do these things. But every day is a new chance to not do it. And I think when you feel a lot of social awkwardness, you can like get into this spiral of everything that I've ever been is what I will always be. And like there's no room for me to evolve or change or anything. And these stories get really rigid in your head. If you were like, yeah, I was a little word vomity today, sit with that. Sit with the feelings. And like maybe they're telling you something that has a kernel of truth and you can have compassion for yourself, hear that and be like, I'm going to adjust. Knowing that you can adjust and proving to yourself that you can adjust, I think is where the confidence comes from.
Yo, Casey is out here telling me when I'm word vomiting. This is unsubstantiated, but I get the distinct feeling that those who've dumped awkwardly on me at parties to the point where I wanted to get away had absolutely no self-consciousness about that whatsoever.
Yeah, it's hard to know unless we track down these people. But the people who tend to be the most egregious dumpers are serial dumpers who
they're serial, exactly.
not have shame about it.
no, they needed to listen to this conversation.
Yeah.
Someone says alcohol as a social lubricant causing crippling hangxiety is a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it is. I don't really relate because I have an intolerance to alcohol, which means I can only have like one alcohol ever before I turn extremely red and get congested and feel really sick. So this is not necessarily my culture, but I have heard that this is a thing and you have my sympathies. Consider not drinking it.
It's so tough, like, because my partner doesn't drink. He also has an intolerance to it and, like, honors that. And that's mostly great because you wake up the next day with probably fewer regrets. But he has expressed feeling like he needed a little bit of social lube, so to speak. And I'm trying to figure out what that might look like. We shouldn't have to raw dog every social interaction, but alcohol culture these days is really fucked up. Actually, there was a fascinating, do you know the YouTube channel Kirksgezacht?
No.
It's a popular sort of like science education channel with these like cute animations. You know what? I'm going to spell it for people because Jesus Christ. They had a really cool video recently about alcohol and alcohol culture. Kurzgesagt is spelled Kurzgesagt, and they break down like science topics. And, you know, interestingly, Gen Zers are drinking less than millennials, but they're also not socializing as much. So there's like a little bit of a correlation there. And I do think society needs to do more to help us interact without needing to like get fucking blitzed and then regret whatever we said last night.
Totally. Yeah. I think bring back activities at get-togethers. I think that like having a little activity, a little game goes so far, giving people a purpose to sort of gather around and direct their energies toward. That's the lubricant, you know? Go to a batting cage.
And weirdly, like the placebo effect is amazing. I have recently just been drinking like straight up light tonic water out of a fancy glass with like lemon and whatever. And it like fully makes me feel like I'm partying because I guess it's like a little gross.
Yeah. Defector had our annual retreat a couple weeks ago, and we always do karaoke when we get together. And I didn't feel like drinking that night. And so I just had a Heineken Zero. And we're like 3 hours into the night, and I'm like dancing and singing and having so much fun. And somebody came up to me and was like, "Are you doing this stone cold sober?" And I was like, "Yeah, this is so fun."
You're like, get on my wavelength.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have the best attitude ever.
Yeah. But a zero ABV beer, like that is sometimes close enough. Yeah.
All right. Last question for you, Alex. Thank you so much for this very cozy and relatable chat. What do you think is the number one thing that people are overthinking with regard to social anxiety? And what is the number one thing people are underthinking?
Okay, so the thing they're overthinking is how much people give a shit about you, period. That's it. The thing they're underthinking, though, is the cost of sitting out an experience because you're afraid it'll be awkward is so much higher than the cost of feeling awkward. And I think people do not pay enough attention to that. And so I urge you to do the awkward thing today. Do it right now.
That is such a good way of putting it. Thank you so much. If people want to keep up with you and your current projects, where can they do that?
I'm on Instagram at Alex Laughs. My podcast is called Try Hard, 2 words, and you can find it everywhere.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, listeners, so much for tuning in. Now's the point in the episode where I share a tidbit of evidence-based advice for how we overthinkers can get out of our own heads this week. And today's tip might actually appeal to your inner perfectionist in the best possible way. Instead of conducting a post-mortem of everything you may have done wrong in an interaction, what if you actually had a pre-mortem for something coming up? Instead of waiting for something to go wrong and then spiraling about it, or doing the classic overthinker thing where you just marinate on every worst case scenario, this technique asks you to flip the script. Here's how it works. Pretend it's 6 months from now, and the thing you're stressing about, job application, a forthcoming engagement maybe, or another big decision, has completely flopped. Now write down why. What went wrong? What were the red flags? What got in the way? This technique was developed by psychologist Gary Klein, and it's used by high-stakes teams, like surgeons and NASA scientists, to anticipate and avoid failure. The idea is, if you can name the specific ways things could go wrong, you're actually not catastrophizing. You're planning. You're giving your brain something useful to do instead of allowing it to loop in uncertainty. So try it this week and see if it helps. Pick one thing you're spiraling about and write a little pre-mortem. Then turn that list and try transforming it into a game plan. That's all for now, my sweet overthinkers. And remember, until the next thought spiral, think it over, just don't overthink it. Magical Overthinkers was created and hosted by Amanda Montell and edited by Jordan Moore of The Pod Cabin. Our theme music is by Casey Kolb. Thank you to our magical manager, Katie Epperson, coordinator, Reese Oliver, and Network Studio 71. Be sure to follow the pod on Instagram at Magical Overthinkers. We're also on YouTube, link in show notes, and ad-free episodes as well as behind-the-scenes extras are available on the Magical Overthinkers Substack at amandamontell.substack.com.